Hello, I'm Camille Crittenden, Executive Director of CITRIS, the Center for Information Technology Research in the Interest of Society at the University of California. I'm the moderator for the session on enhancing diverse collaborations in the research ecosystem. Thank you for joining us today. This presentation is one of 3 pre-recorded videos focusing on individual speakers' material before all the panelists come together in February during the live discussion. In this video, Michael Crow, president of Arizona State University, will discuss a new evolution of research universities. At the end of his remarks, he will be joined by William Dabars, associate research professor in the School for the Future of Innovation in Society and senior research fellow in the Office of the President at Arizona State. He will join President Crow to further delve into the material that President Crow introduced. Thank you.
So thank you, Camille. What I'd like to try to do today is just put into perspective the fact that evolutionary change in the higher education sector has been going on for 2,400, 2,500 years, perhaps a bit longer, depending on how you count it. And in the last starting with Plato's Academy moving forward, and in the last several hundred years in the United States, in our emerging, fledgling, still evolving democracy, we've seen the emergence of some fantastic institutions of higher education. The colonial colleges and what we call the first wave of American higher education, small Greek academies focused on certain kinds of learning. Ultimately, in the second wave, the emergence of publicly funded and publicly supported academies like the University of South Carolina, the University of Georgia, the University of North Carolina, the University of Virginia. We saw in the third wave the emergence of a uniquely American institution, the land-grant university, focused on teaching and learning in applied subjects at the time, agriculture, engineering, as well as education focused on the broader cross-sections of society. And then this unique thing that has emerged that many people have seen as the ultimate, certainly not, but at least the penultimate emergence of a new kind of university, at least in the United States, and then ultimately around the world. And that is the American Research University model, which was a merger of the British Colonial College as manifested in the United States and the German Technical Institute as manifested in Germany and other Northern European countries. And so that research university model, which has been ongoing now for 140 years or so with the 3 progenitors, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, and the University of Chicago, that has evolved to be an unbelievable class of institutions as identified in Jonathan Cole's book, looking at the fantastic contribution of the Great American Research University, looking at the contribution of these institutions, not just to the United States, but to the world, to our future, to all the things that we see now as our modern society in one way or another being deeply influenced by these research universities and this research university model. The evolutionary forces that have been at work have been dynamic and complicated, particularly in the United States, with the emergence of a massive 335 million person federal state. It's a federalist system that we have, a federal republic, but a massive, massive democracy with unbelievably high aspirations for equality and unbelievably high, not yet attained aspirations for justice or equality, and unbelievably high aspirations for liberty and well-being enhancement and so forth. And so I think what's really been going on, and when you think about enhancing collaboration between and among universities, we've got to step back a little bit in an evolutionary sense and say, how well have we been doing? And I would say in the short form of this presentation that American universities and colleges and American research universities specifically, while having made unbelievably heroic, unbelievably powerful contributions to our fundamental understanding of nature, to the advancement of our theory of our culture and the dynamism of our culture, the new theories of the state, and new theories of the self, and new theories of the person, all of that has been fantastic, but inadequate. Because what's happened along the way in the evolution of the American Research University is that it has become more and more exclusive. for the most part, more and more limited to smaller and smaller fragments of society, and more isolated from the broader aspects of society itself. So, as has been the case, and speaking in evolutionary terms, there's a strange evolutionary characteristic that goes on in higher education that doesn't go on in industry, and that is X and Y axis evolution. So you have X axis evolution through time with 4 previous waves of higher education that have emerged: colonial colleges in the United States, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Bowdoin, Grinnell, Colorado, Oberlin, Occidental, others that have emerged. But then then these continue to emerge over time, and then in each of the waves, the first, second, third, and fourth wave, you have original entries, and then you have additional evolution, and they all seem to remain intact. None of the new waves replace the old or previous waves. And so what this means then is that we found ourselves in an evolutionary moment where each of the progenitors in each of the waves have become exemplars that then everyone else in that wave then strives to be, allowing them to evolve and adapt themselves, but then also becoming in some ways more and more rigid to their model, more and more fixed in their model. So when one asks the question, how are you going to create or enhance diverse collaborations among and between universities? One, we need many more types of universities. We need new types of universities and colleges. We need new types of research universities. We need new ways to approach problems, and so forth and so on. And so I guess the long-winded 5.5-minute opening comment here is that the evolutionary processes are underway. Many people find it hard to believe because they think that each of the 4 previous waves are intact and operational and highly fulfilling, and therefore have completed all of our aspects of our society. But we see that that's not the case. I'll give you one example: the pandemic. We're about as unprepared for this pandemic as one could possibly imagine. We're unprepared. We don't know how to communicate science well enough. We don't know how to engage in complexity well enough. We don't know how to cut and cross between disciplines and subjects well enough. We don't know how to build confidence around knowledge. I mean, all kinds of things not related actually to the conduct of science or to the conduct of scientifically driven medicine. It just, you know, argument after argument after argument. If only we'd figured out how to collaborate better. If only we'd figured out how to connect to society better. If only we'd figure out how to teach teachers better, or how to engage in science literacy better, or in any of these things. And so here we're faced then with an evolutionary moment in which new classes of institutions are likely to emerge, and the role of the research university, its role in discovery, its role in creativity, its role in innovation has never been more important, and also its limits have never been clearer. And so the significant role going forward is one in which we have to figure out how, through both our existing research universities and our newly emerging research universities, including those that I would argue that need to operate at a new scale with a new speed and a new egalitarianism, this role is becoming ever more important. So as our species becomes more dominant on the planet, as the planet becomes more complicated in its relationship with us and us with it, and as our own social constructs, economic constructs, and cultural constructs become more complicated, the role of the research university in discovery, creativity, innovation, and social scale teaching and learning and social scale transformation becomes ever more important. Now, what are the barriers? The barriers that we have is that are numerous. You know, what keeps research universities from being able to respond to these changing needs, and that is basically we form athletic leagues, but we don't form climate change research leagues. We form leagues that play hockey or gymnastics, but we don't have ways to pool our assets together. We have our faculty operate largely as and only as small centers, small groups of faculty members, independent forces, each attempting in a highly competitive way that science is being driven to beat out some of their competitors, to be the best with the theory, or the first with the theory, or the first with the dynamic set of outcomes, leaving little room then for the scaled problems. You know, how will we actually manage our relationship with the planet? How will we actually facilitate cultural and economic competitiveness across the entirety of a highly diverse population? How will we map the intersection and merger of understandings between Western science, Western technology, Western culture, and indigenous science, technology, and culture. How do we make all of those kinds of things happen? And so the notion there is that the barriers are our design. The barriers are that our designs are too small, too isolated, too rigid, too structured, too isomorphic in their objectives, and so forth. And so overall, we have a number of barriers that we have to overcome. And so one way to overcome them is to allow additional or foment or accelerate additional evolutionary outcomes. And so one of these evolutionary outcomes that William Dabars and I have been writing about has been what we call the fifth wave, which is the facilitation through prototype emergence, including the institution that he and I are both a part of, Arizona State University, which laid out a plan about 20 years ago to become a highly democratic, what we call New American University, one built on the idea of inclusion versus exclusion, measuring our success based on who we included and how they succeeded, not saying, oh, we're really fantastic because we didn't admit 95% of our applicants. A university that does research that not only works to win academic recognition and academic outcomes, but a university that also works to measure its impact on the actual outcome of the society in which it's embedded. How competitive actually is our economy, how socially mobile is the population, how culturally aware and integrated and compatible has the society evolved to be. And if it hasn't, then those are problems that the university should partly own. And then lastly, in the design or shaping of the New American University model is the notion of the university actually taking responsibility for outcomes outside of the institution itself. If K-12 is underperforming, the universities are partly responsible. If we have 50% of the people that graduate from high school are inadequately prepared for the economy or the society that we presently live in, the universities and the colleges are responsible. And so the fifth wave university is a manifestation of the emergence of a new wave of new American universities. They are egalitarian, they are accessible, they are based on community impact, they're measured against social outcomes, they are scalable, technologically sophisticated and advanced. They're scalable in the sense that, you know, they're not going to educate a few thousand students, but maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of students using clusters of faculty members and alliances of faculty members, alliances of colleges and technological tools and so forth, all moving to the scale of the actual society, as opposed to the previous four waves, all of which continue to exist in this model, but they exist performing their functions while new waves continue to emerge. And so I think I'd close with this notion of the emergence of a new type of American research university, one which is devoted to the actual measured success of the society in which it's embedded in, not in an abstract intergenerational way, but in a functional way, in a day-to-day way. And that's an idea that's perhaps anachronistic to some people when they think about what a university should be, but that's what we've been advancing. That's what we think is needed. That's what the prototypes that have been stood up can do and have been doing. And in our new book, The Fifth Wave, we outline what it takes to move forward, why it's important, how these leagues and networks might be formed, and what that could mean for overcoming the huge educational disparities in the United States. The fact that most people that go to college don't graduate in the United States from any college or university once they've started. The fact that our economy has not been as competitive as it could be. Low rates of economic growth year by year, decade by decade. The fact that we are unable to tackle longer term problems like global climate change. The fact that we're incapable of really getting our act together on a more acute problem like COVID-19. These are all examples of the need for additional, not replacements, but additional types of higher education institutions. And the fifth wave really represents our opportunity to be able to do that.
Well, you've led the reconceptualization of the academic organization of the university away from departments to transdisciplinary colleges and schools. ASU has become a global leader in sustainability, and now you've launched the Global Futures Laboratory, which includes the College of Global Futures and 3 embedded schools, including the School for the Future of Innovation and Society and the School of Sustainability. How do you see the And you've likened the scale of this enterprise to one of the national labs. How do you see this emerging as part of the movement toward the fifth wave?
Well, I think, Will, that what we're really doing here is, if every university just does the same thing, we compete for resources, and the hope is that there'll be winners and losers in the contest for the advancement of science, and there'll be a few Nobel Prize winners, and everything will work out. Well, obviously, that's not the way that things are working. Everything hasn't worked out. We still ended up driving up global temperatures by at least 2 degrees Celsius, perhaps as many as 5 degrees Celsius, if we can't get our act together. What that tells me is then, therefore, that the structures are inadequate. We need, in addition to the distributed academy operating in its individual arenas, we need also some universities that are capable of moving in new directions. And so, we built a new school for Earth and space exploration, a new school for social transformation, a school for the future of society, innovation in society, a new school of sustainability, which is an outcome-driven science. It doesn't mean that everybody has to do this, but it means that if we really want to take on the actual challenges of our society ahead of us, it means then that some universities are going to have to be different than others. They're going to have to move in new ways, organize knowledge production in new ways, scale in new ways, network in new ways. And that with this, then, there can't be this hierarchy that, well, just these universities that are doing fundamental physics or fundamental chemistry, those are the great universities. And somebody over here that's working on some social transformation quest, or the bridging of the humanities and the sustainability scientists, that's somehow a lesser activity. We've got to get past that and understand that all of this is what's going to be needed for us to be able to move forward. So a key part of the fifth wave evolution is also intellectual design, the breaking down of the notion that somehow every university just needs to be a replicant of every other university. In fact, they just move back and forth to the highest bidders between the universities to get the best deals or the best labs or the best equipment. And so the notion is mix it up, diversify intellectual constructs, diversify physical constructs, diversify mission constructs, allow all of that to be university and college based, that is driven by the ideals of the core of the academy. And then that would then greatly broaden our opportunity for all kinds of outcomes, including the fact that we're wholefully and willfully unable to organize ourselves at the scale of the actual problems of what the Global Futures Lab at ASU represents, which is thinking about these really complicated systems, both reductionistically and from a systematic or systems perspective, all at the same time, from 20, 30, 40, or 50 disciplines, and bringing all those people together. Some universities are going to have to move in that direction.
Well, you've envisioned an even more all-encompassing role for the research university, which is as a platform for universal learning, so that anyone at any stage in their life can learn anything to advance their careers or fulfill their desires for learning. How do you see this as an expansion of the fifth wave?
So one element of the fifth wave design is this notion of accessibility and scale. So you're running as we are, a large research university with thousands of faculty members and tens of thousands of staff and literally hundreds of thousands of students and learners, in our case, from middle school all the way through graduate school. What one has to do in some of the colleges for the benefit of the broader society is break down all the walls, so that anyone across the totality of their life can have access to some of the assets that the universities have. So one of the things that's happened for whatever reason is that universities became hoarders of their assets. Well, the library is just for us, or these assets are just for us, or no, you can only have these things, or just these things. And our classes are just for these people, and only for people that can pay $50,000 a year or $60,000 a year to be here with us. And that's fine. But if every university does that, then we won't be able to accelerate the broader impact of the modernization and the broadening out of what educational attainment might be. So the fifth wave universities are, by design then, technologically empowered to be able to link with K-12, to be able to have research, educational technology and learning outcome research that links with anyone. And so it's one of the special assignments or the special missions of the Wave 5 universities. And And it also means then that, you know, the traditional way for universities can go about doing what they're doing and evolving in the way that they're evolving. And then the new Wave 5 schools can then work in new ways and give us a broader set of institutions to meet our national needs.
You've always encouraged the sort of use-inspired Pasteur's quadrant research that the transdisciplinary reconfiguration of academic units at ASU has encouraged. This is now being termed HIBAR research, highly integrative, basic, and responsive. By some estimates, university-based research that's HIBAR still only constitutes a fraction of university-based research. What more, from your perspective as a university president, what more can be done to encourage more use-inspired Pasteur's quadrant, HIBAR sort of research?
Well, we should have universities, some universities, that's what they do. And so, and they're not lesser institutions because they do that. We've got to get past this notion that there is a social hierarchy to knowledge production. And so it isn't the case that physics is more important than chemistry and chemistry is more important than biology, or economics is more important than political science and political science is more important than sociology. Those always are inversely related to complexity. And so it's just weird that we've built social hierarchies of what's more important, what's more fundamental, that this is more important because I can understand this or that. And so high bar oriented research should be highly, highly valued. Now we have high bar institutions in the United States. They're called academic medical centers. These academic medical centers are unbelievably high bar oriented. We just stopped at the boundaries for the most part of these medical centers. There's a few agricultural colleges that work this way that are high bar oriented, but in the rest of our institutions, that's been really, really difficult for us. There's fighting between the disciplines. There's politics within the institution. There's rigid structures, all these kinds of things that make it really, really difficult. And so the way to advance high bar is to socially recognize it within the academy and to allow institutions to become high bar oriented. That doesn't mean they don't have fundamental research. Also, it just means that they have an emphasis. And so we at this institution decided years ago that we'd have what we call intellectual fusion. Intellectual fusion would allow this range of new kinds of disciplines to emerge, and also that we would honor and recognize and make co-equal use-inspired scholarship to fundamentally driven scholarship. Back to Pasteur's quadrant and Don Stokes's quadrants. Bohr's quadrant, basic or fundamental research, and Pasteur's quadrant are equal in the model as he presents it, and they should be equal in the social structure of the universities themselves, and right now they aren't.
And I think what unifies all of the various models, the New American University, the fifth wave, is that knowledge production, discovery, and innovation underpin the learning environment.
Well, absolutely. And so this is another thing that's happened is, though, there's all these purveyors of learning assets who have no faculty. They're not involved in the knowledge creation process. And so the fifth wave, at the core of the fifth wave, is a faculty working as faculty do, as discoverers, as problem solvers, as creators, as designers, as new era thinkers, as theoretical critics, all those things that faculty do. At the core of the fifth wave is still that academic spirit and that academic culture. It just has a broader set of implications, and it's fueled or amped up by a technological mechanism that allows it to be projected to people who can't also be physically at the university with the faculty. And so it's a new model. It's a new model of an American university, the fifth wave model, which is scalable and technologically enhanced, but it's not altered in terms of the role of the faculty. The faculty are just pursuing a different trajectory towards the same objective.
Exactly, and it's a socially embedded institution.
Yes, embedded in the sense that it's taking responsibility for the communities in which it's embedded. It's not distance. You know, it actually makes a difference where it is. It makes a difference where it's located in the communities that they're serving and how that's working.
And knowledge production is socially robust because it engages government laboratories, business and industry, societies and
Yeah,
organizations.
you try to break down all the reasonable barriers that can be broken down. You break them all down, and you have these fifth wave universities would be more integrated, less isolated. Someone said to me the other day, probably as a critique, they were talking about a very successful small institution in a place called Pasadena, California, called Caltech. And the person says to me, and it's a fabulous institution, one of a kind, I mean, world class, says, we don't try to get bigger, we just try to get better. I understand that, but somebody better decide to get bigger because and have an outstanding research grade faculty at the same time, drawing from the discoveries of the Caltech faculty and working with the Caltech faculty, but then engaging with larger numbers of students on campus, engaging with students in technological delivery modes, engaging with lifelong learners across the entirety of their life. And one does not want to devolve that activity or turn that activity over to the market where there's no more faculty code, no more faculty processes. It's all just the purveyance of a commoditized form of education. What one wants is these institutions of higher education with their core faculties committed to each other, but operating in different ways. In a sense, think of it this way, broadening the numbers and types of institutions to actually fulfill the complete spectrum of what universities are supposed to do, rather than narrowly focusing these institutions to each of them work to do essentially the same thing, competing against each other.
And although the fifth wave is a subset of public research universities, academic enterprise is at the core of this model.
Well, academic enterprise is this notion of operating the institution as something other than a publicly supported public agency bureaucracy. And so it's essential that these universities, because of their scale through partnerships, operate as enterprises, that they are able to work with corporations as we do with many. They're able to, I don't mean just take funding from corporations, I mean partner with corporations, work to help a corporation. So we're working with the Starbucks company right now with 15 or 16,000 of their partners as our students. And we're working with them in a range of technological challenges and so forth and so on. In a sense, we're helping the Starbucks company achieve their unbelievable goals of related to sustainability, related to human capital development, related to the success of their company. Some universities should be working in those modalities. And this is a part of the fifth wave model.
And it's not only Starbucks, of course, but you've also envisioned the fifth wave academic platform as being the appropriate vehicle for training in the corporate sector.
Well, we're also saying to ourselves that there's, we have these great universities and these great faculties, and if they're isolated and cut off, and you can't really go back to the university once you're working in company X, or once you're an artist, or once you're changing your careers, or you're moving from being a welder to an engineer, or you're moving from being an engineer to an artist, or whatever it is that you're doing. How do you gain access to everything that the universities have? How do you get up to speed? And so the fifth wave university is a sense, it's taking its shields down and it's making its inner core available. Now that you don't want every university to do that, because those fifth wave schools may get pushed and pulled in different kinds of ways. And so what you need is these networks of universities and variety of university types that are working together and with each other, and a lot more cooperation and a lot more interaction. And so that's really what we're looking for in the fifth wave structures.
And although workforce preparation is one of your chief concerns, the liberal arts remain at the core of this model.
Without the liberal arts and without liberal arts education, we're doomed. I mean, we're going nowhere because we have no idea of who we are or what we are or where we're going or why we exist. And so I'm a firm believer that perhaps in some of these fifth wave schools and maybe others, it will be easier from a technological perspective to be an English major and an electrical engineering major. That'll be trivial, or to be a history major and someone that's studying sustainability in a very significant way. And so I'm a big believer that everybody should be double majoring, triple majoring, moving across different subjects, learning across the entirety of their life. And some universities have to be set up in a way where that's easy to do. So we're certainly concentrating lots of energy in the humanities. We have more humanities majors now than we've ever had, philosophy majors like we've never had before in terms of numbers, all kinds of online educational experiences that have been really, really powerful. And so what we see now is that we can connect everything together. I'll also say an interesting thing. So we think the hottest thing in the market right now is a philosophy or an English major who can also code. Now you're talking. And this is what people want. They want thinkers. They want broad thinkers who have this other language to communicate in, coding.
And over the past 18 years, degree production has more than doubled. The number of students of color has increased by several hundred%. You're building an institution that reflects the socioeconomic and intellectual diversity.
Well, we think we're strongly of the view that public universities should completely represent the entirety of the diversity of the society, both socioeconomically and ethnically. And we do. And we didn't. I mean, we had to work towards that for a long time. That was very hard to pull that off. And we have doubled the 4-year graduation rate while doing that. And we've increased the number of degrees that we produce by almost a factor of 4. And then the diversity of the people getting those degrees by much more than that, as you suggest. And so we believe that the public universities have a special duty, a special purpose to actually serve the entirety of the public.
And the research enterprise has increased by a factor of nearly a factor of 5 without increasing the size of the faculty.
So the same faculty that's working now in these new modalities, these new collaborative ways of thinking, these new HIBAR areas of research, while taking on more students, while producing more graduates, while diversifying the student body, they've also, as you suggest, increased their research expenditures from all the competitive forces that are out there almost by a factor of 5. Actually, by a factor of 5, just about.
So thank you, President Crow and Will, for the very engaging and exciting discussion. It's a wonderful vision that you lay out for the 5th wave of universities and enriching the whole higher education ecosystem. I appreciate the diversity that you described, not only within the university that's going to make it more robust and exciting and productive with regard to HIBAR research, but just overall for society and the students and workers who will benefit from that. Also, what you're laying out creates a more diverse higher education ecosystem overall by having different kinds of institutions serve different kinds of needs and intellectual growth areas. So your ideas and vision are really stimulating, and I look forward to discussing them with you and the other panelists in February. Thank you so much.